Operational optimization, he said, not even bothering to remove the graduation ring still on his ring finger. We don't keep positions that no longer align with the new vision. He didn't look up at me, eyes locked on his computer screen like he was running an empire. Despite having been CEO for exactly 6 hours, I stood there, still holding the internal report I had revised that very morning, something requested urgently for tomorrow afternoon's executive meeting, a meeting I now clearly wouldn't be attending. I'm being terminated, I repeated, not to confirm it, but to force the young CEO to acknowledge my presence. Ethan Carlisle, 29, only son of founder Raymond Carlisle, the man who had trusted me as a strategic advisor for nearly a decade. Ethan had graduated from Wharton less than a year ago and was handed the CEO title at Carlisle Tools just yesterday. While everyone else was busy signing farewell cards for Raymond, Ethan had already begun modernizing the legacy. That's correct. This is part of the leadership streamlining plan, he replied without a hint of hesitation, like he'd rehearsed the lines. I know you've made significant contributions, but this new direction requires minds that can pivot fast and truly embrace digital transformation. The last line sounded ripped from a conference PowerPoint. I almost laughed, but just nodded. Then I'll need formal termination paperwork from HR. I'm not leaving without it. That was when Ethan finally looked up. Maybe he expected shouting, pushback, even begging. I didn't flinch. Didn't even let go of the report. 12 years at Carlisle had taught me one thing. Emotional control is the sharpest weapon in chaos. HR will have a document for you, he said quickly, though I caught a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He was playing the boss, but the stage was slipperier than he thought. I exited in silence, walking through the corridor on the 18th floor, the one I used to haunt till midnight finalizing the Steel Forge distribution deal. Shocked stares and whispered guesses weren't subtle. But I didn't pause. I just nodded faintly at a few faces I'd trained myself, people whose kids now went to college thanks to bonuses I helped negotiate. I took the elevator down, still didn't quite feel fired. Like a switch had been flipped, but the lights in me hadn't caught on yet. Inside my desk drawer, now surely locked, was the last employment contract I signed with Raymond 4 years ago, when a rival firm in Minneapolis offered me a 6-figure package. Raymond didn't just match the money. He said, I need you here long-term, Greg. I need someone who sees disaster before it hits the door. Back then I was 34, just off the toughest negotiation of my career. The way he signed that contract and clapped my shoulder made me believe I was part of Carlisle's legacy. Now the man across from me signed nothing but a pink slip. At the parking lot, I opened the trunk, placed the folder inside my worn leather bag, then slid into the driver's seat. My hands clenched the steering wheel. Not from anger, but to steady the adrenaline surge. I pulled out my phone and opened the email from HR. Subject line, Notice of Termination, Gregory Lane. No thanks, no context. Even my name was misspelled. I smirked. Ethan hadn't read my file, and there was no chance he'd read my contract. I pulled over beneath an old oak tree across from Carlisle Tools. On the passenger seat was that same leather bag holding the 4-year-old contract Raymond gave me back when Bridgestar Industrial in Houston made me a 6-figure offer. I'd reviewed every line of that document, had even insisted on adding a few uncomfortable clauses, not to shield myself, but because I'd watched a seasoned colleague get blindsided by strategic realignment. Raymond understood. He didn't just agree, he handwrote the final line himself. If Gregory Lane is terminated without just cause, all protective provisions shall activate immediately. That package included 12-month salary at current rate, full immediate vesting of any unclaimed stock, a waiver of non-compete if let go unexpectedly, and a severance bonus worth $300,000. We signed it during a legal firestorm with retail giant Gearmark. I saved Carlisle a fortune by spotting a distribution loophole just in time. Raymond had said then, I'm not just keeping you, Greg. I'm investing in the one thing Carlisle can't replicate, your mind. That same mind had just been dismissed by a kid too green to distinguish lean strategy from cutting the company's own backbone. I flipped to page 7, right to the termination for no cause clause. The wording was just as clean as when I last checked. In the event of termination without documented performance failures or corporate restructuring supported by audit, the employee is entitled to all outlined compensation and waiver. No performance review, no audit-back restructuring, just a reckless decision made on bias and power fantasy. I snapped photos of the key pages, sent them to my personal email, and texted Jenna, the lawyer who helped draft the agreement. Fired. No cause. Contract still binding. Call when free. Less than 3 minutes later, my phone rang. Greg, are you serious? Jenna's voice was half stunned, half exhilarated. That contract could make Carlisle cut a second check. I need everything ready by tomorrow morning, I said, eyes fixed on the building across the street. You still have the notarized copy? Of course, she said. And if they try anything... I also kept the recording from that final signing call. I nodded, though she couldn't see. Good. I want Ethan to learn what happens when you make decisions without reading who you're firing. Hung up. Check the time. 4:15 p.m. If my guess was right, Ethan was upstairs giving his big welcome speech to the management team he imported from a failed startup. I wasn't out to destroy Carlisle. Raymond had built it with care, and many people there still deserved better. But if Ethan believed he could toss me out and continue like nothing happened, he was about to learn a costly lesson. That evening, I sat in my midtown apartment, contracts and legal papers spread across the kitchen table. Among them was an untouched offer letter from Allied Apex, the largest industrial distributor in the western U.S. They'd once wanted me as regional strategy director. I declined for Raymond. I dialed the contact. Second ring. Mr. Langford, this is Gregory Lane. I turned you down 2 years ago. I think it's time we revisit that conversation. His voice was calm, curious. Gregory, what happened at Carlisle? I'll explain later. First, would you still be interested in someone who knows their entire contract system, supply chain, and pricing gaps inside out? A pause, then a laugh. Yes, very interested. I leaned back, watching city lights flicker through the window. Battles rarely start with fists. They start with a signature nobody bothered to read. 8 minutes after that call, a formal job offer from Apex hit my inbox. A billion-dollar firm wasn't going to let an opportunity like that slip. Langford hadn't just remembered me. He'd been watching Carlisle tools closely ever since Raymond started whispering about retirement. We need someone who doesn't just understand contracts but understands how Carlisle thinks, Mr. Langford wrote. Salary will be twice what you're currently earning, plus performance equity. Start whenever you're ready. I didn't respond right away. There was still unfinished business with the place that had been my home for 12 years. Walking away clean is easy. Striking back at the precise moment, in the precise way, is much harder. I forwarded Jenna the full breakdown of my contractual entitlements for termination without cause, asking her to prepare an official notice to Carlisle's HR department by tomorrow morning. Subject line, Contract Enforcement Gregory Lane. Then I started drafting thank you notes, not for Ethan, but for 3 major suppliers I had successfully negotiated with over the past 3 years. Each had good reason to remember me. I had secured their exclusive contracts, renegotiated warranty clauses, and opened the East Coast market for their products. My message was short, respectful, and simple. I was no longer with Carlisle and would soon share details of my next role. All 3 responded within the hour. One of them called me directly. Greg, what the hell happened? Are they out of their minds? I chuckled. Maybe they thought I was slowing down their innovation. You're the one who kept them from diving headfirst into litigation, he laughed, then dropped his voice. If you're headed to Apex, just let me know. I'll advise our board to follow your lead. No need to reply, things were already falling neatly into place. That evening, I walked along Commerce Street in downtown Nashville. The March wind sliced through my collar, but my thoughts were burning. Not with anger. Those flames had gone. What remained was a cold precision born of experience. Ethan Carlisle thought purging senior staff made him a leader. He'd forgotten that companies don't run on revolving chairs. They survive because of the people who keep the gears from snapping. I stopped at a bar I knew well, ordered a bourbon. As the bartender set the glass down, my phone lit up. Caller ID, Allison Vega, Apex's head of legal. Gregory, she said, crisp and professional. Langford said I'll be handling your onboarding. I haven't accepted yet, I replied, turning the glass in my hand. But you've read the offer? I have. I have a condition. She paused, then chuckled. I like someone who brings conditions up front. Go ahead. I want permission to consult for Carlisle for 2 weeks under the transition support clause triggered by my termination. Clever move, she said, planning to stab them on the way out. No, I answered, eyes on the amber light bouncing off the dark wood table. I want to leave things intact before they collapse it themselves, so when I walk away, no one can say I left a mess. Respect. I'll draft the addendum immediately. Hanging up, I felt like I was stepping into the ring, no longer wearing armor for someone else, but finally drawing my own strategy. Tomorrow, Carlisle would receive the formal legal notice. Ethan would realize he hadn't just lost a senior executive, he had set off a chain of consequences far beyond his control. And me? I'd enter Apex not as a deserter, but as the strategic asset Carlisle had foolishly thrown away. The best part? I hadn't made a single public move. It all lived in emails and in my head, but Ethan would learn soon enough. Some contracts deserve a slow, careful read before you sign off on cutting what you think has no value. I arrived at Carlisle Tools' main lobby at 8:20 a.m., crisp shirt, charcoal tie, a thin folder tucked neatly under one arm. The front desk fell silent as I entered, as if my footsteps cracked open a memory someone had tried hard to seal shut. Behind the counter was Tyler, a former intern who'd trained under my legal team 2 years ago. His face lost all color before he stood up quickly. Mr. Lane, I heard about yesterday. Is Mr. Carlisle in? I asked, cutting through the stammer. Yes, he came in early. He's upstairs with Ethan and the senior team on 19. I nodded and walked straight to the elevator, pressed the button for the top floor, where I used to prepare the Monday morning risk reports. As the doors opened, the sound inside didn't need explanation. Raymond Carlisle's voice was shaking glass. You fired Gregory without reading his contract? I stepped into the hallway. Assistants outside the meeting room stared at me, wide-eyed, frozen. Dad, What did you think would happen when you dismissed the person who restructured our entire distribution system last year, the one who kept us from an FTC fine by revising that contract clause in time? I stopped before the glass-paneled door, took one breath, then another, and knocked. 3 solid, deliberate taps. Silence. Then Ethan's nervous mutter, "No way." "Come in," Raymond called. His tone wasn't angry, it was surgical. I pushed the door open. The room fell into absolute stillness. At the far end of the table, Raymond sat with arms folded. His face had aged a decade in 24 hours. Ethan stood by the presentation screen, cheeks burning. Gregory Lane, the man deemed no longer a fit, was standing right in front of them, not shaken, not vengeful, not here for retribution. I set the folder on the table. Raymond looked at me with something heavier than regret. "I'm sorry, Greg." "What's done is done," I replied. "I'm only here to ensure the contract terms are honored." Ethan started to speak, but Raymond raised a hand. "I've reread it. All 7 pages. That is one airtight contract. I asked you to sign it in that meeting with our legal counsel. Every clause was crystal clear." Raymond nodded. "My son didn't do his homework." I turned to Ethan. "I'm not here to cause problems. I'm here to ensure every clause is executed properly, including the 10-day transition support period." Ethan hesitated. You plan to come back to work here?" "I'll fulfill my contractual obligations. After that, I'm gone. I've accepted another role." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "Apex?" I didn't confirm. He already knew. Raymond always read ahead. Ethan looked lost. "I'll participate in the transition meetings, that's it. If further questions arise beyond that, speak with my lawyer." I turned to leave, but Raymond called out, "Greg, there's something I want to ask you." I stopped at the door. "Could you not turn your back on this company when all this is over?" I turned, met his gaze. It wasn't regret. It was something rarer. Respect from someone who had been wrong. "You built Carlisle on credibility and respect. If that still exists after I'm gone, I'll consider it. Ethan stayed quiet. Raymond nodded. I left the meeting room, closing the door behind me. The faint metallic click echoed like a wake-up call, dropping hard on a young CEO who hadn't yet learned his first real leadership lesson. Afterward, Raymond called me into his office. Nothing had changed. Books I'd authored still lined the shelves, the family photo sat slightly crooked on the desk, and the same leather chairs flanked the window where he often sat to think it through. "Greg," he began, voice low and deliberate, "I don't want to lose you. If you agree to come back, I'll sign anything. Your old position, higher salary, equity scaled to tenure." I looked him in the eye. "I have already accepted another offer." He nodded slightly, disappointment written all over his face. I didn't hold it against him. I hadn't imagined this day would come so soon either. 12 years of building hard to let go. "But I do have a proposal," I continued, pulling a document from my jacket. "I'm willing to consult for a 10-day transition period to ensure pending contracts are handled smoothly. Conditions: Carlisle pays out all contracted compensation plus a daily consulting fee. Entire engagement remains confidential with no breach of my Apex agreement." Raymond opened the file, flipped through the pages. I could see him parsing every line. His face relaxed slightly as he reached the clause separating proprietary information. "You drafted this like you've had it ready for a month." I just promised myself I wouldn't be caught off guard again. He closed the folder, pushed it back toward me. "I agree, but I want Ethan to attend every meeting." No surprise there. As part of a leadership lesson? As part of accountability. He fired you. Now he needs to learn how to fix the fallout. I didn't argue. If Ethan wanted to call himself CEO, he needed to understand that consequences don't play out in slides. They live in the hours it takes to clean up poor decisions. Raymond signed the agreement, stamped it, then looked at me. "I'm sorry I didn't stop this sooner. I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to make sure the people I worked with aren't dragged down because someone else didn't read a document." He nodded again, then picked up the office phone. "Send Ethan in." A few minutes later, the door opened. Ethan entered, still looking shaken. He glanced at me, then at his father. No one invited him to sit. "I just signed a contract for Gregory to consult for the next 10 days. You'll be present for every handoff session." Ethan grimaced. "I don't think that's necessary." Raymond's eyes narrowed like blades. "You didn't think reading his contract was necessary either." Ethan clenched the handle of his briefcase. I kept my tone even. No gloating, no disdain. Just a professional who had done everything right, wrongfully dismissed, now back to make sure his absence didn't break the place completely. "First sessions this afternoon, conference room C," I said. "I'll review the status of 3 regional contracts waiting to be renegotiated. If we don't act this week, they'll move to a competitor." Raymond looked at his son. "Bring a notebook. This isn't an MBA case study, it's real." Ethan didn't reply. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Greg? You're not transferring data to Apex, are you?" "I'm not taking anything that doesn't belong to me," I said. "But what's in my head, that's what Carlisle chose to walk away from." He left without another word. I turned back to Raymond. "You still want to help the company," he noted. "I want to help the people who built something good here with me." He smiled. "That's enough." I picked up the documents and walked out. In the hallway, a few former teammates quietly watched. No clapping, no words. But I caught the look in their eyes. Relief. The kind that comes from knowing someone came back to brace the walls while they were still inside the building. I arrived at Apex Industrial Headquarters at 8 o'clock sharp Monday morning. The silver glass tower in the heart of Nashville's business district exuded a polished coolness I once thought would never suit me. Now, it felt like a welcome, clean slate, free of emotional baggage. My new office was on the 14th floor with windows overlooking Centennial Park. A folder bearing my name already waited on the desk. Gregory Lane, Director of Strategic Contracts. Leonard Langford knocked just as I was setting up my computer. "You look like you never left the grind." "Habit," I replied. He grinned. "We're expecting a lot from you, starting with the Southern Region deal. Our legal team missed 2 problematic clauses in the last round." I nodded and opened the file. It felt like revving up a machine that had just been oiled. ready to fire at full capacity. That afternoon, I returned to Carlisle Tools in a completely different role. Everyone I passed in the hallway greeted me with a mix of surprise and restraint. Some nodded, others avoided eye contact. Conference room C was ready. Ethan arrived 10 minutes late. He sat across from me, briefcase still on his shoulder, nothing in his hands except his phone. I said nothing, just slid 3 folders across the table. These are the 3 pending regional distribution contracts, I began. 2 need warranty clause adjustments. 1 needs revised delivery timelines. If we don't sign in the next 3 days, they'll move their orders elsewhere. Ethan flipped through a few pages, brows tightening. I don't recall getting any risk alerts on this. I sent them 4 weeks ago, back when I still had a title. No one replied. He stiffened, but didn't argue. I continued outlining each clause, every exposed risk, and my proposed fixes. The room felt weighted. At the end of the session, Ethan finally spoke. Are you trying to make me look incompetent in front of everyone? No need, I replied. They've already noticed. By the second meeting, the tone had shifted. Ethan arrived on time, laptop open, taking notes. I noticed he started asking questions, shallow but relevant. In our third session, he asked for the digital versions so he could cross-reference that to supply chain data himself. The technical team seemed more focused too, less guarded, more engaged. On the 5th day, after the contract review meeting with the Arkansas distributor, Raymond waited for me in the hallway. I've been observing, he said. The boy is starting to listen. I'm not sure he fully understands, I replied. Understanding is another matter, but at least he knows who he needs to learn from. Raymond stared out the window at the loading dock, where trucks were moving cargo. I was wrong to think that giving authority was enough. I see now. Handing over power without guidance is just dropping someone into a trap. I didn't respond. That was for him to realize. He turned back to me. You never took this work lightly, Greg, not even after what he did. I respect what you built. That doesn't mean I'll watch it fall apart. Raymond nodded. I appreciate you coming back, even temporarily. I didn't answer. The story here wasn't over, but it no longer belonged to me. That afternoon, Ethan entered the meeting room before I did. He handed me his revised version of the New Orleans distributor contract, along with 3 questions about price lock terms. I looked up and met a gaze that no longer avoided mine. Can you check this section for me? He asked. I'm not sure if we should apply a monthly or quarterly model. I nodded. Some people need to stumble before they learn. Not everyone gets the chance to fix things. Ethan had just been given one, and it came with a 6-figure price tag. On day 9 of the transition period, after nearly 2 hours in a joint meeting with legal and logistics, Ethan approached me once everyone had left the room. He carried no files, and the stiff posture he once held was gone. His back was straight, voice steady. Do you have a moment? He asked. I'd like to talk privately. I nodded and motioned for him to lead the way. We turned into his temporary office, the one that used to be Raymond's before he officially stepped down. Once the door shut, Ethan pulled a thick folder from the drawer. This is a list of outstanding contracts with ambiguous terms. You were the original drafter on many of these. I've compared them to the new versions from the outside consultants, but they don't understand the original context. I didn't interrupt. He flipped through a few pages, then looked at me. I moved too fast. When I signed the termination order for you, I thought I was showing strength, but really, I just wanted to prove I was in control. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I was wrong, not just about the contract, but about ignoring the one person who could help me understand the structure of this company. I leaned against the desk, arms crossed. What do you want from me, Ethan? I want you to consider continuing your support, not full-time, just advising on complex contracts, the kind the consultants don't have the internal history to handle properly. Do you have Leonard Langford's approval? Yes, Ethan replied without hesitation. I called him this morning. He wasn't thrilled, but he didn't block it. He said if I want to learn, I should do it the right way. I couldn't hide my surprise. Ethan had called Apex's CEO, admitted fault, and asked for permission to let me support his old company. How long are you thinking? No set time. Even 1 contract a week would help. I need time to understand what you built, Not for your sake, for mine. I don't want to keep breaking what my father spent 30 years creating. I glanced at the folder. My name was still listed as the originator on more than half the documents. Many contained custom clauses, things no one but the original drafter could fully explain. I'll consider it, I said, but on one condition. Ethan looked up. No more vague documentation. Every recommendation I make, you log it formally. If you apply it, you understand every word. He nodded firmly. I will. I closed the folder carefully and picked it up. Send the digital copy via email. I'll review it over the weekend. As I turned to leave, I paused. Ethan, yes, you've come a long way in 10 days. But if you want to be a real leader, learn to stand up for your team before they fall. Don't wait until the damage is done. He didn't respond immediately, but I saw something in his eyes. No longer pride, but something more useful. The determination to stop repeating mistakes. At the parking lot, I checked my phone. A message from Leonard. Heard you're about to juggle 2 jobs. Don't let Carlisle take too much of our time. I replied with a short message. Won't happen. I'm just finishing what I started. Not to protect my own seat, but to make sure the person who inherited it doesn't collapse the floor beneath them just because no one taught him how to read to the last line. In the second month at Apex, my office was moved to the 16th floor, next to the executive wing. Leonard called it a mark of strategic respect, but I knew what it really meant. Carlisle had lost something Apex just claimed. I no longer worked only with legal teams. Now, I was building the core contract frameworks for 3 new development arms, one of which came from a proposal I made back at Carlisle. Ethan had dismissed it as too conservative. Now it had been approved after just 2 meetings. On my desk, a newly signed draft of a 7-figure agreement with the Western Distribution Network waited. Under draft approved, my name was printed in bold beside contract architect. That afternoon, while discussing maintenance clause revisions with the engineering team, my phone rang. Raymond. I hear Ethan says you're still helping with some things. I keep my word. I'll complete anything tied to what I wrote. Raymond paused. Do you regret not coming back? I don't look backward, I said, only at how I walked away. The call ended with a short well-wish, but I heard what he didn't say. Carlisle had lost a cornerstone it once took for granted. That evening, during a dinner with Apex senior leadership and key partners, Leonard unexpectedly raised his glass and looked directly at me. Not everyone has the courage to stand in the place that betrayed them and still act with integrity. Gregory didn't just do that. He turned someone else's mistake into a lesson for everyone around him. I'm not great at praise, but the look from the others around the table told me this wasn't just for show. A month later, I was invited to join the internal risk board, the team overseeing legal, financial, and operational readiness before Apex launched new initiatives. Leonard tasked me with designing a contract review model integrated with operational data. A level of involvement Carlisle never gave me, fearing it was too intrusive on other functions. Every morning, I passed through the lobby, once spotting 2 former Carlisle staff waiting at the recruitment office. They didn't avoid my eyes, nor did they look desperate. They nodded to me like someone they trusted to lead them somewhere better. Not because of power, but because of credibility. I didn't interfere in the hiring process or send referrals. I just kept working, letting every clause I wrote speak for itself. Wherever I go, words in a contract remain the clearest fingerprint of their author. By quarter's end, Carlisle quietly reached back out to partners whose deals had been delayed due to Ethan's lack of context. 3 of those companies declined. They'd already signed with Apex, mostly because of structures I had put forward. Ethan sent me a short email. No complaints, no apology, just one line. I get it now. Thanks for not letting us fall apart. I didn't reply. Some lessons are best repeated in silence. On the wall behind my desk, Leonard hung a quote after I was granted regional signing authority. The sharpest revenge isn't making someone fall. It's making them look up at you from where they once looked down. I don't call it victory. I call it justice. But this time, it's signed in both ink and value. Gregory's story is clear proof that professionalism, resilience, and ethics can rise above narrow-mindedness and bias in the workplace. Though unfairly dismissed, he didn't retaliate with rage, but with skill, composure, and dignity. As a result, Gregory not only reestablished his place in the industry, but forced those who once dismissed him to look again and learn. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is success that speaks for itself. What's your take on how Gregory handled injustice and changed the course of his career? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, real-life stories about family, work, and what truly matters.